America's economy feels like a paradox. We see headlines about record home prices and a red-hot stock market, but behind the numbers, something else is happening. A quiet crisis is building, fueled by a relentless rise in housing costs that's outpacing incomes, leaving homeowners and renters stretched thinner than ever. A subtle shift in one key metric is already signaling which markets are in the most danger, and the warning signs are everywhere. Entire states are buckling under the weight of ballooning insurance premiums, stagnant wages, and a silent exodus of residents who have simply given up on the dream of homeownership. When the next economic downturn hits, some of these markets won't just slow down, they'll implode. Beat today. We're counting down the 10 U.S. states whose housing markets are most vulnerable to collapse, beginning with a state where the local economy is a story of slow-motion surrender. Number 10, West Virginia. The housing market here is a cautionary tale of a state losing its economic foundation. For decades, the coal industry was the engine, supporting entire towns with high-paying, stable jobs. But as that industry has all but vanished, the local housing market has been left adrift. Agents here report that while median home prices hover around $175,000, new listings are down more than 15% year over year, not due to a lack of homes, but a lack of people to buy them. The state's workforce participation rate is among the lowest in the nation, with nearly half of working-age adults having left the job market entirely. This isn't just unemployment. It's a silent surrender that starves the housing market of new buyers and renters. For investors, the low cap rates on struggling rentals make for a tough cash-on-cash return. For sellers, demand is razor-thin. And for buyers, while prices look low, the long-term risk of a shrinking population and limited job growth could make this a classic example of a market that's cheap for a reason. Number 9, Mississippi. The Mississippi housing market is a puzzle. On the surface, prices seem affordable, but a deeper look reveals a foundation built on quicksand. The median household income of around $48,000 is one of the lowest in the country, creating a price-to-income ratio that, while not the highest, is still pushing a staggering number of residents into financial distress. The state has the lowest labor force participation rate in America, which means the pool of qualified buyers and reliable tenants is shrinking. Data indicates that nearly a quarter of the state's population lives in poverty, a crushing weight that makes saving for a down payment or even paying rent an impossible task for many. The state's housing crisis is a reflection of a deeper systemic failure. For buyers, the low prices are tempting, but the lack of economic opportunity could turn a home into a long-term liability. Sellers are facing a small buyer pool, while investors are finding that rental yields are being eaten alive by a lack of stable high-wage jobs. Number 8, Michigan. The story of Michigan's housing market is often framed as a comeback, but multiple reports suggest it's more of a fragile mirage. While Detroit's urban core has seen a luxury apartment boom, much of the state's housing inventory is aging and struggling with rising maintenance costs. The market remains dangerously dependent on the volatile auto industry. A single slowdown in vehicle sales could trigger a new wave of layoffs and a subsequent foreclosure spike. We saw this in 2008 when Michigan led the nation in home repossessions. Agents report a worrying trend. While home values have risen, a significant portion of homeowners are struggling with overdue bills and medical debt, making them one paycheck away from being forced to sell. The state's population is shrinking, with a net outflow of residents, leaving behind an aging housing stock. For buyers, the market is a mix of urban highs and suburban lows. For sellers, the window of opportunity is closing. And for investors, the long-term risk is that the state's comeback is built on a foundation of shifting sand. Number 7, Alabama. Alabama's housing market is showing a worrying disconnect. While home values have seen a modest rise, data indicates that the state is facing a quiet affordability crisis. With a median household income well below the national average and a high poverty rate, a large percentage of residents are struggling with housing costs. The average price-to-income ratio is stretching families to the breaking point. Adding to the stress are the soaring insurance costs. Agents report that flood and homeowners insurance premiums have been rising relentlessly, eating into cash flow for both owners and investors. The state's housing stock is aging, and a lack of quality construction and a fragmented school system make it difficult to attract the kind of high-earning residents who could stabilize the market. For buyers, the low sticker price of a home hides the true cost of ownership. Sellers are finding that the pool of qualified, local buyers is smaller than it seems, while investors are struggling to make the math work with thin rental yields. Number 6, Arkansas. The housing market in Arkansas is a slow-moving crisis, a story told in the empty storefronts and declining populations of its rural towns. While the state has a low median home price, its affordability is a trick of the eye. With a median household income of just $53,000, many residents are trapped in a cycle of low-wage work, making homeownership a near impossibility. The state has one of the lowest rates of bachelor's degree attainment, which cripples its workforce and makes it difficult to attract higher-paying industries. Agents here often cite a silent brain drain, with educated young people leaving for opportunities in neighboring states. The state's economy remains dangerously reliant on a few key employers, and any shift in their business models could send shockwaves through the local housing market. For sellers, the market is a waiting game. For buyers, it's a gamble on whether the state's economic trajectory can turn around. And for investors, it's a classic case of low entry cost with high operational risk. Number 5, Kentucky. Kentucky's housing market is the textbook definition of a slow bleed. The collapse of the coal industry has left entire regions of the state economically abandoned, and the housing market reflects that despair. We've seen property values plummeting in certain counties, with homes in some Appalachian towns being sold for literal pennies on the dollar. The state has one of the lowest labor force participation rates, meaning the pool of potential buyers is shrinking by the day. And a critical metric, the median days on market for listings, is stretching longer and longer, indicating a significant drop in buyer interest. If you want more data-driven breakdowns like this each week, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next market map. For buyers, this market is a high-risk, high-reward play. For sellers, the situation is grim, with little hope of a fair market return. For investors, the low price of entry is countered by the very real possibility of zero demand. Number 4, Nevada. The Nevada housing market is a gamble, and for many, the house is always winning. The market here is dangerously dependent on tourism, a notoriously volatile industry. We've seen this before. During the last recession, Nevada was ground zero for foreclosures. Prices have rebounded aggressively since then, but so has the price-to-income ratio, which now sits at an untenable level for the average resident. A quick look at the rental market shows a similar story, with rent growth far outpacing wage growth. This creates a high-stakes, low-affordability environment where the entire market is a house of cards. Meanwhile, one of the biggest threats to this market isn't a financial metric at all, it's water. The state's water supply is under extreme strain, a silent ticking bomb that could have a catastrophic effect on future growth. For buyers, this market is a roll of the dice. For sellers, the recent gains could vanish overnight. And for investors, the cash-on-cash returns are getting harder to justify. Number 3, Louisiana. The housing market here is a perfect storm of environmental and economic risk. Data indicates that the state has one of the highest poverty rates and the lowest median household incomes, making homeownership and even stable tenancy a struggle for nearly a quarter of its population. A key factor driving down affordability is the relentless rise in insurance premiums, especially flood and wind insurance. The cost of just living here is rising faster than incomes, a trend that is not sustainable. Remember that subtle metric we opened with? The rising share of distressed listings and the increasing days on market are flashing red here. Agents are reporting a growing number of listings that are being pulled and relisted with significant price cuts after failing to sell. The state's reliance on the volatile oil and gas industry makes it vulnerable to global price shocks, which could leave thousands unemployed and unable to pay their mortgages. For buyers, the low prices are a mirage. For sellers, the struggle is real. And for investors, the cap rates are being crushed by soaring operational costs. Number 2, Hawaii. From the outside, Hawaii looks like a luxury real estate paradise. But for residents, the housing market is a financial nightmare. With the median home priced north of $850,000 and the cost of living the highest in the nation, local families are being priced out of their own state. The price-to-rent ratio is out of control, and while vacation rentals have propped up the market, recent regulations are threatening to pull the rug out from under it. A massive exodus of native Hawaiians and long-term residents is already underway, a silent tragedy of displacement driven by a single-minded focus on tourism and foreign investment. The state's reliance on one volatile industry means any economic shock or even a change in global travel habits could devastate the housing market. For buyers, a home here is a dream that has become impossible. For sellers, the market is a golden goose, but for how much longer? For investors, the returns are incredible, but the risk of a market correction and regulatory crackdown is immense. Number 1, Illinois. The housing market in Illinois is sitting on a financial time bomb, an unsustainable pension crisis. The state's retirement systems are underfunded by a staggering amount, a black hole that is forcing the state to raise taxes relentlessly. This is creating a vicious feedback loop. Illinois has some of the highest property taxes in the nation, a crushing burden on homeowners that is now triggering a mass exodus of residents. Data from multiple reports suggests Illinois has one of the largest population declines of any state. As higher-earning residents leave, the tax base shrinks, which forces property taxes even higher on those who remain. For the average homeowner, this tax-induced drag on affordability is the single greatest threat to their equity. The pension bomb isn't ticking anymore, it's sparking, and the housing market is the most exposed. The next recession will accelerate this spiral, causing a cascade of tax hikes, service cuts, and a new wave of migration. For sellers, this is a ticking clock. For buyers, it's a gamble on a state's future. For investors, the cash flow is being bled dry by an inescapable force. So, how can home prices rise while affordability collapses? The answer lies in the subtle shifts we've talked about today. The paradox is an illusion. It's a temporary high, fueled by low inventory and a market that is fundamentally broken. The metrics we discussed, from rising days on market to the growing gap between incomes and home values, are all signs of a market that's being stretched to its breaking point. Remember that subtle metric we opened with, the one that predicts price cuts? That's the days on market, now climbing steadily in these states. The one county where tax reassessments are flipping cash flow? That's Cook County, Illinois, where property taxes are now an inescapable force driving residents to the border. The takeaway is simple. Not all markets are created equal. The national trend is just a statistic. The real story is in the local numbers, and in these 10 states, the numbers don't lie. The silent crisis is already here. If you enjoyed this data-driven breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more. And let us know in the comments, which market on today's list surprises you the most, and what would be your number 11, the next market you think belongs here?